Hello world, welcome to CSL TV. I'm your host Sean Slattery, and this week we're bringing you the first in a three-part series on some free tools and techniques you can use to secure and enhance the security of your home computer systems. To start, we're going to talk about DNS. So DNS is effectively, DNS or domain name services is what effectively the phone book of the internet. It's what translates www.google.com into an IP address, like a telephone number that you don't want to bother trying to remember. And in the case of the internet, those phone numbers, those IP addresses can change and do change pretty often. So one of the things that typically happens with your home ISP networks, your cell phone provider, is the DNS servers they provide automatically are there just to provide you with connectivity to the internet. What we're going to do is we're going to swap those out for some providers that actually perform more than just giving you access to the internet. They're going to do things like security filtering, so blocking sites like malicious software or malware, phishing, credentials theft, anything like that, as well as, and as we'll demonstrate, the ability to block sites that are adult related, so pornography and that nature. So with that, cue the intro. All right, let's get started. So when it comes to DNS providers, there are actually many available on the interwebs, but our favorites are actually OpenDNS, now owned by Cisco. It's formerly called Cisco Umbrella, and Cloudflare. With both services, they have the option of performing only security filtering, so blocking phishing sites, credential harvesting, password thieving sites, malicious websites, as well as blocking adult content such as pornography. So let's get started with Cloudflare first. So for that, we're going to go ahead and go into our network settings. Now, while I'm modifying the properties of our network adapter here, our Ethernet adapter, these techniques would work equally well on Wi-Fi as well. So here we're going to modify TCP/IP version 4, and notice everything's automatic by default. All we need to do to modify this is implement our own IP addresses in the DNS. So for Cloudflare with adult filtering, it's 1113 and 10.0.3. And an easy way to test this is to go to a control site. I'm going to try Google Chrome here, and the domain test domain is typing is good, malware.testdomain.com. And the way Cloudflare blocks things, it actually makes the site appear to be offline. So this is actually perfectly normal behavior at this point. And I can do this as well on Chrome to show that we're doing this across the entire system. And these techniques, by applying settings at DNS, will apply for any user on this system and any application on the system. Key advantage to doing it at DNS level. So let's do this test again, malware.testdomain.com. Can't reach the page, appears just offline. If this was a real malicious website, our connection would just be prevented and we'd be good to go. So let's go and switch over to OpenDNS. So back to network settings. So 208.67.222.123. And again, we're implementing the security and adult content filtering mechanisms at this point. 220, that's 220, not 122. 23. Okay, before we actually test this, there's one extra step I want to do just to be sure that everything's in place, because what OpenDNS does differently is they will give an explicit block page. But for that, to ensure maximum compatibility, we do want to make sure we import the latest Cisco Umbrella certificate into the system. It's there to avoid any potential error messages, or certificate mismatch prompts that may come up in the system. So for that, I can simply Google for Cisco Umbrella root certificate, and the first hit is the documentation on how to install it. So go to the web page off of umbrella.com, search for the word download, and it's right there. So let's go ahead and download this file. It takes a couple seconds. Yes, we do want to download it and keep it. Thank you, Windows warnings. To install it, all we need to do is open the file and click install. And one key thing here is we want to apply it to the local machine. The benefit of doing it this way to local machine is that any user set up on this computer will benefit from the certificate being installed. We could do current user, but then later on, if you were to create another user account, you'd be missing some of these settings. So it's important to do it across the entire computer. And we're going to place it explicitly in the Trusted Root Certification Authorities store or location. So it says completed, it's done. So now when we go ahead and test, and we can do this across Chrome or Edge in this case, we'll go to some good test domains with OpenDNS. First one is welcome.opendns.com. This is general configuration option. It lets you know, it checks to see if you're actually working, you're using their services correctly. And then from there, you can do something like internetbadguys.com. This is a control phishing site. So notice now when we try to attempt a site that would be blocked, we have an explicit splash page that tells us, hey, this is blocked because of a phishing threat. We could also do example adult site.com. Typing is always helpful. Give it a second. And again, we get a nice block page here with everything that's going on. Okay. Right, so there you have it. By simply changing your DNS settings on your computer, you can enable content filtering and security filtering across any application, your browsers typically, on your computer. We want to take it a little bit further and take a look at some settings inside the browsers themselves. So modern browsers have the ability to use a newish DNS protocol called DNS over HTTPS, basically hiding a DNS query within a web request out to the internet. It's great on paper. The downside, though, is you start to lose some control. There can be some disconnects between what your browser is doing and what your computer or the rest of your system is doing. Also, if you happen to use VPN services, whether it be connecting to the office or trying to get access for content from the US or UK or something like that, there can be some strange things happening when the browser tries to use a different DNS lookup process than what your computer's doing. So what we want to do is go into our browsers and disable DNS over HTTP. And in the case of Edge, we can search for DNS. And what we want to do is just go ahead and turn this off. Now, I do want to point out, if you really did want to just use enable OpenDNS, for example, in one browser, you could come in here and choose Cloudflare, for example, but note that you are using very specific basic security filtering. You're not getting any of the content filters. So in this case, we just want to go ahead and use what we're establishing at the system settings at the network layer, and that way it applies across everything on the system. And if ever we need to troubleshoot, we know we can go to one place to figure out what's going on. So for that, we just have to go into here, disable DNS over HTTP or HTTPS, depending on the nomenclature of each browser. Same thing for Chrome. Go into Tools and Settings, search for DNS. It's under Security in this case. Scroll down and just turn off. And note that Chrome also had an option for choosing your different service providers. So same thing here. We want to have consistent settings across all of our system, and we want to use the ones that we've defined explicitly. So that's it. Just to make sure we're still filtering correctly, I'll choose Chrome in this case, and I'll go back to my phishing website, or phishing control site, Internet Bad Guys. That is a tough one to type. .com. And we can see we get a nice blog page again. So there we go. Two very easy ways to add security and content filtering to your system using either OpenDNS or Umbrella, or Cloudflare, and then explicitly also following up with those settings in your browsers. Hope you enjoyed those tips. Hope they're useful for you, and we'll see you in the next video. Series content stream like substance of where we're going to give you cool stuff to do and think about. Not sure what I'm looking at right now on the screen because I can't see. Take 17. Hello world. Welcome. No, that's no good either. Take 18. Oh, I was close. Computer on the internet. That is. I didn't mention what I was doing. Hello world. Sean. I'm your Sean, your host. That was actually pretty good. That was bad. Take 456. They're both super top yes mega top cool things to do. And I have absolutely no idea what I would talk about next. Okay, let's try that again.